whatever your clients bring up, whatever you're trying to help people with, it's a mirror. Your practice is a mirror for whatever's missing in that practice is something that needs to be worked on within you. And so sometimes looking at that mirror is a challenge, but also it is necessary.
Welcome to CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. I'm your host, Brandy Mabra. It's time to show up as a confident leader to create a practice and life you love. So hello. Welcome back to another episode of CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. I am so excited for today because I have one of my amazing clients here, Krystal Jackson. Krystal Jackson is a client inside of Private Practice CEO and also an amazing CEO for her practice, Simply Being. So we are going to have a really great conversation of the realness of being a CEO, the ups and the downs of being a CEO, and I'm just so excited to have her here. So welcome to CEO Conversations, Krystal.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yes, so excited. So to give some folks color, would you introduce yourself and just from your lens and, all the amazingness that you are?
Okay. So I'm the CEO and clinical director of Simply Being Wellness Counseling. We're based in Farmington, Connecticut. I would say probably the things that ground me and keep me right now is just kind of leaning more into what's authentic for me. So I love to travel, even while I am building this practice, but also I'm getting more, I think just more clear and more honest about what's
Mm-hmm.
necessary, like who I'm becoming in order to really lead this practice and grow, my business where it needs to go.
Yeah, I love that so much. I love even just your practice name, like Simply Being. And I think it's definitely a testament to you as a person because you just simply there's nothing complicated. I feel like you're very straightforward. You're very honest about what you're thinking, what you're not thinking. Just over the past couple years that we've been working together, you're just so fun. You're so fun. So I love just even
Appreciate
with the
that.
name of the practice. But I will say you dropped like some gems. So you just naturally said like, "Oh, I love to travel." But I remember specifically you showed up to a Tuesday. Yeah, I just got back from Amsterdam, and and I feel like even in one-on-ones, you'll be like, "I just got back from Costa Rica," and I know that you have your practice, which we'll go into, but I would love to start off with that piece of you because I think that is just a lot of times practice owners feel I can't grow a practice and I can't travel and I have to be nailed down to this desk. And you're choosing something different for yourself. And I think that is so important and allows for practice owners to be more successful. So tell us more about your travel and how it's fueling you as you're going on with this journey.
Oh, I absolutely love this question. So a lot of times I often I do. I love to travel. I started traveling. My mom used to take us around the country all the time. And I actually
Mm-hmm.
got the opportunity to go to three countries at the age of 15. I went to India, I went to the UK, and I went to Paris, France. And that kind of started it for me. My mom would tell you, like, anytime there's an opportunity for me to go somewhere to do something, like I was in the club, I was going. So in this journey, there was about 6 months where I did not go anywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
one of my friends said to me, Krystal, you have to go somewhere because I noticed that like a light has gone out of you. You just don't seem the same. And I've learned that traveling for me allows me to just be immersed in another culture. It brings a different way of like education for me, but also it's exploration, it's fun, it's
Mm-hmm.
freeing, and so it helps me to not feel as constrained. And I remember one of our I think our last month talk we had, and I was like, yeah, I think I'm gonna hit maybe 6 countries this year. And I was like, and I try to be really aware of like just sharing that because for some people, they're like, how are you getting all this money? Like, how are you? And this is not normal. And so, for me, I'm like, well, this is my normal. I don't have to
Mm-hmm.
necessarily be out of the country. I did a lot of domestic travel last year, but it's just I need to allow myself the opportunity to get out of the space because every time I come back, I have such a like burst of creativity.
Mhm.
I just feel more energized. So yeah, I love travel for that. It's actually, hopefully I will be able to host some trips coming up because I want to be able to share those things with people as well. But yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I remember that conversation where you were talking about your friend and was saying like calling you out and not being able to work or burnout because you weren't traveling. And I just
Hmm.
love the fact that you make that as one of your non-negotiables. And just even from my experience with traveling, it's transformative. It allows for you to see the world differently. You do. The creative energy that comes with that, it doesn't happen when you're just sitting at your desk. And so when you are able to see the world and the transformation that happens because you've exposed yourself to something, it's expansive. So I just, that's like one of my favorite things of just how you just be dropping it and all the things. So I wanted to make sure that people know that about you, because
Yeah.
oftentimes people will say, "Oh, I can't be freedom." There's no freedom when you're building a practice. There's no freedom when you have a brick and mortar. There's no freedom, and that's not true. Your definition of freedom, you said, this is just what I do. So traveling 6 countries, this is what I do. And this is
Hmm.
what I'm deciding for how I'm going to build a practice. And this is what I'm deciding for what I'm going to include in my schedule and the boundary that I've put in place. So I love it. So I know that you've had your practice. You officially launched in 2018 and you decided to go all in 2021. So what gave you that confidence, and what were some of the things that happened for you to get to the place of opening up your practice and the journey for wanting to help people from the private practice space?
Yeah, so it starts really in 2017. That's when I, again, connected to travel. I went on a wellness
Mhm.
retreat in Bali. Didn't know anybody, just flew across the world, met up with some people. And then I had another retreat after that with some awesome, awesome women. And they were just like, "You're taking too long to think about this." And I'm not
Mhm.
that type of person. Like, I know if I'm doing something, I know. But
Mhm.
sometimes when I can't see enough of the pieces, I'll delay.
Mhm.
And so one day, I just, after the retreat, it was about 2 weeks after that retreat, and I said, you know what, let's just get this license. Let's start it.
Mhm.
It took me about 6 months to really get to what was my full, because I was working with clients at the time. I was also, at the time, I was working full time for the Department of Corrections, which is not the easiest work to do. I was working as a mental
Yeah.
health counselor,
Mhm.
and I was finding that, number one, professionally, I was losing skill, because in that type of environment, it really is, crisis based.
Mhm.
You don't get to use the expansiveness of your skill as a mental health professional. So I felt like I was losing skill. I felt like there were other opportunities for me to learn and to expand. And I said, if I can't I wasn't feeling rewarded. So I said, let me create a thing that's my thing where I can get that. And so the name Simply Being actually came from what I wanted to embody. I wanted to just be able
Mm.
to be here, to simply be, to not have to, have any type of pretense, or,
Mhm.
have to fit into a box. I'm like, I'm here. And so one of the things about me is like, I can come up with an idea like that. So
Yeah.
we've had to work on that, Brandy, where it's like, what are you going to focus on? You can't be doing all these things, right?
Right.
And so, so that's just kind of how my mind works, where I can see all the possibilities of things, and then I get excited. I decided to work with helping professionals, and particularly who may have been burned out, wanting to change careers even though they loved it, because that's what was going through. I had went through that a
Mhm.
few years prior. And so that was the focus of my practice when I first started. It is the focus still, but it's expanded to, being able to give those tools in a more broad kind of wellness perspective to a lot more clients, to bring them in.
Yeah.
But what happened for me was, it just became like I was feeling suffocated working every day in a
Mhm.
place where I could not be the fullness of who I wanted to be. I couldn't simply be. I had to be this type of person in that environment for a safety measure. And what helped me really to accelerate that was I did a brain spotting training. And in the
Mm.
practicum, that's what I utilized, because I felt that it was a block, that something was stopping me from really just moving forward. I think a big piece of that is there's only one person in my family that I know that is an entrepreneur. And not we're not really close. So I had no roadmap for this. But what I did have at the time was a couple of friends who were in their own business or wanting to expand as well. And we all decided to do our own practices together, not as competition, but to be a support of one another. And so those things between removing the block with brain spotting and just kind of seeing it as a possibility and also honoring kind of what I was being told what God was telling me to do. I said, you know what, let's try it. I'd rather try it out than live with the regret of not trying it. And so that's how I ended up taking the leap.
Yeah, I love it. I love it so much. And I love too to hear you say even how you came to the practice name and the fact that I'm saying like you just that just represents you so well. And so when we think about mission and vision for you to go all in, what were some of the lessons that you had to learn like the hard way, you would say?
Whew, but there's a lot of lessons. I'm still learning them. I find that the lessons have levels. Oh my gosh. Um, I think what was the most important is that definitely trying to understand what kind of team that I want to have with me to grow this thing.
Mhm.
I remember in the beginning I kept saying I don't need it to be that big. I can just
Yeah.
make, if I make 500K, I'm good. And then I was like, well, why is that? Why is that? I realized that was just because, again, not having all the pieces, like just being at the beginning of a thing. And so I consumed a lot of like books and podcasts just about business mindset, what it means to be in the start phase to growing and scaling and understanding that. And so I just had to expand my understanding of what the process looked like. But when I met you in 2024 or 2023, like I always say, like I was beat down, like the this was kicking my butt, okay, because just the revenue wasn't matching up with the passion, and not having as much of the understanding of what's clicking. In some ways, a
Mhm.
lot of what was working for the practice came really easy for me in some ways. The parts that didn't come easy were actually taking a lot of energy from me. And so I found myself kind of just floundering in a sense because I was like, this was working, it's not working. What's next? Oh, this person's leaving, and what am I gonna do now? And I don't want to see clients anymore because I can't see the clients and run the business. And it was just like
Mhm.
starting to feel very, very overwhelmed by all the parts that are required of you as a private practice owner. I'm definitely doing much better with that. I will say there's still aspects that I'm still learning, and so that's why I say there's levels to it because just the same way as we do with our clients, it whatever your clients bring up, whatever you're trying to help people with, it's a mirror. Your practice is a mirror for whatever's missing in that practice is something that needs to be worked on within you. And so sometimes looking
Mhm.
at that mirror is a challenge, but also it is necessary. Like the streaky parts on the mirror was necessary for me to be able to get the cleaner and say let's wipe it on down and see
Mhm.
how we can start. Let's have a I think last year I declared that it was like a reset year. It was a reset year for me to be more connected to who I wanted to be as a CEO, and also what was necessary for me as a person to be able to continue on this path without feeling, continuing to be in that cycle of burnout.
Yeah, yeah. And I think what you're saying too, there's levels to this. And I think sometimes people think like, oh, it's easy. And it's not. Like you get to one stage of business growth, and then there's like a whole other next level of problems and mindset shifts and oh no, and skill sets that have to be learned and strengths that have to be developed and all the things. And so I love what you're saying because you're giving people permission to do the work, but also recognize that it's not easy. And I think sometimes people look at other stories and even how we started off the podcast. You want to travel 6 countries and you've been to some amazing places and you're building that in. But also, there's a lot of work that's being done behind the scenes to set you up for success in order for you to grow the practice that you want to grow. So I know we talk a lot about inside of like private practice CEO, the importance of mission and vision and being very clear. and you have a mission. You are very clear about your mission. You're very in alignment with how you help people and how the practices help people. And even again, going back to how you named your practice, at what point in time did you realize that passion wasn't enough? And, where in systems had to start to come into play?
I'd never run a business before in my life. You hear a lot of entrepreneurs say, "Oh, I was selling candy in school and I had a lemonade stand." And yeah, I did that when I needed to do it. And then we wrapped it up
Mhm.
and we was done, right? The goal was accomplished. So I had to kind of redefine for myself, like, how, okay, well, how are we wrapping this up? How do I know that, like,
Mhm.
yes, check, I've got this done. So yeah, in 2023, when I came to the retreat, I think it was 2023. It might have been
It
2024. Don't
was.
get me to lying.
It was 2023. Yep.
Okay, when I
I
came to the
remember it like it was
retreat,
yesterday.
yeah, yeah, the last 2 years have kind of blurred a little bit together for me with some of the things, but um, at that point, I just said, I needed to understand how private practice CEO could help me, because I knew that there were some deficits, that I had some blind spots that I wasn't seeing. And I also knew that my business could only go as far as I was willing to kind of
Mhm.
stretch and evolve myself. And so that was at that point, I had one of my best staff. She was self pay. So cash was coming in, and she decided she wanted to open her own practice. So I was
Mm.
dealing with that. And, I had a little bit of turnover just because I wasn't understanding the power of being really intentional with hiring. And, understanding too, like, the load that it requires of you as a CEO when you're hiring people. So yeah, I was feeling a little bit like, oh, we were doing so good and now we're not. And
Mhm.
I think one of the things is that with this journey is you really have to get, people say chase the rejection, like chase the
Mm.
failure. You really have to get comfortable with
Mm.
failing, because there's going to be so many aspects of the business where you're going to
Mhm.
be learning, and you have to be okay with that. And so I do thank that person, because I had hoped we were going to, be able to grow something together. But I'm really glad for that lesson, because then when other people left or I had staffing changes, I was, I understood what was necessary to handle that. And so that was one of the things. And the other thing was just understanding accountability. Like, how am I holding my team accountable? I think that's still something that I'm like, I definitely have locked in on in 2026 for sure. But understanding that as well is that if you don't have an aligned team, that is an energy drainer. So I couldn't carry any more of, like, I'm excited about this, you guys should be excited too, yay, we're gonna make
Mhm.
money. It's like, no. It's like record scratch. No, you got to figure out what are you doing to get to the money,
Mhm.
um so that was the pivotal point for me in 2023. And I really think the next real change of it was last year, when I was like, okay,
Mhm.
if I'm going to do this, like, this is a year that I have to really do what I've got to do, or else, I'm going to give myself this time frame and we're going to be done with it,
Mhm.
because I'm choosing to do this thing. And so if I'm choosing to do it, then why not allow myself to really see, how can it flourish? How can it bloom?
Mhm.
And so, yeah, those were kind of two main points for me.
Yeah, yeah. I thank you, because chase the failure. Like that needs to be a bumper sticker, or maybe it already is, or it needs to be like on a wall, or written down and posted, because so many people are nervous of failure. But really failure gets you to the other side of things. There's so many opportunities in it, lessons learned for you to make like the next decision. So I just love the fact that you're giving people permission to fail. So when we think about burnout, right? And during like growth phases, and so you said and I remember this moment, but like where you started at 2025 saying I'm all in, and you had already gone through a bout of burnout. What do you think burnout looks like during a growth phase?
Yeah, so for me, it was more mental. So
Mm-hmm.
burnout can be, physical, mental, spiritual. As sometimes people will have. The first time I experienced it in my career was very early in my career
Mm-hmm.
when I was doing the most. It usually takes people 3 years to get their hours and take their test and get licensed. It took me
Yeah.
two because that's how much I was working, but it was at a
Wow.
cost to my physical health. And so when it came this time around, I didn't even understand that that's what I was experiencing. But it was really where my mood, my energy was just so low. It was like I was trudging in the mud every day to try to like get this going, and I was like, I just can't figure it out. And I'm like, I know I'm doing the best I can. I know we're making some headway. And what that did was that kind of caused me to, like I said, really slow down and be very slow about making necessary decisions, very slow about any type of how I was networking and utilizing my resources. It just caused, I just was, I wouldn't say frozen because I was still moving, but it was at a
Mm-hmm.
snail's pace. It was much slower than my than like my normal way of getting to things. I still at some points do have that where it will be like mental fog, where I'm just like, oh, I'm overstimulated. I can see now, and this is
Yeah.
probably COVID, post COVID too, where I'm just so easily overstimulated. I have had to really accept for myself that there is a new way that I have to navigate in any type of external space. So, whereas before I would constantly listen to podcasts, I can't. I have to either have no noise or, it has to be something like Olivia Dean, where, the
Yeah.
vibrations of the music is just, just right, Cleo Soul, something like that. I had to understand that piece of it and also give myself permission to not always be on. Because there were times
Mm.
that I'm like, oh, I'm responding to emails, on Saturday
Mm-hmm.
at 10 p.m. And then my employees are responding back. And I had to say, okay, Krystal, you are, driving the ship here. You're not driving the ship, whatever it's called. You're navigating the ship. If you're responding, they're responding to you. And now your cap of CEO is on, even though it's never off. Like you need to just, you got to
Mm-hmm.
put those boundaries in place. And in some aspects I'm still learning that, but I do believe that I have a much better routine and support for myself instead of me like kind of keeping it in. I'm able to talk it through. I'm able to tell people like, hey, this is kind of, and I really do thank the private practice CEO community because I have really, really great connections from there where I can just go in the group chat or I can just call, my friend, and I'm like, hey, listen. And it can just bring you back down, a little bit, even with strategy, with support, whatever is needed is there. So I would say that those were kind of the things. Number one being mindful of like what was taxing for me and how what I needed to create for myself, like much of what I talk with my clients about.
Mm-hmm.
But also like really, really embracing the support and the resources that I had. And that helped me to move through a little bit more quickly.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that because what I hear is you're protecting your energy as a CEO, which is super important because you are, as you know, like the number one asset to your business. And if you're not good, then no one else will be good. And I love what you're saying. Like, you're just the realness of this is what's happening for me, this is what's coming up for me. And I know even for us working together, I know that you've been very honest with me when you've been overstimulated or, Brandy, I'm fine, and I appreciate just like that transparency because it allows for people to know like, okay, well, what's happening? And, and it's just you again, honoring, protecting your space, protecting your capacity, allowing for those that are around you who truly appreciate the person who you are and to how they need to show up around you too. So, and I think when you're owning your CEO status, it's all of it. And you're not nervous to say, this is what I need, or you're putting others in front of you and forgetting about what you need because you feel bad and or all the things that can happen. And it's just one of the characteristics that you have that I so appreciate about you. So I just want to make sure that I say that because I just love the fact that you're telling people, if you need something, say it. And then also to protect yourself for how you need to show up and giving yourself what you need in the moments. So beautiful.
Yeah, and that's something that I had to learn because I think a lot of times, especially as a black woman, we people don't like, I could be crying. It's like, are you seeing this? Like I'm going, I
Mm-hmm.
have things going on. So I said, you know what? There's a disconnect sometimes with how I show things that I think people, because
Mm-hmm.
I can resolve it in maybe quickly, or resolve it in a certain type of way, that people
Mm-hmm.
don't understand the like depth of like how things are really, how deep it really is, so being
Right.
able to say, hey, this is what's going on. I think that that's something that every CEO has to know, because sometimes it feels like, it is very, it's a single issue within you, and you want to go, you
Mm-hmm.
want to retreat, you want to go inside, and you do need to do that. We do need to be introspective, reflective, yeah,
Yeah.
but we also need to recognize that sometimes we have to use our anchors, we have to use our support
Mm-hmm.
system to really, help give us that push to really, stay up and to keep going.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. So you are in private practice CEO, and you've talked about the community within private practice CEO and the connections that you've been able to make and just some of the growth that's happened. What, for those folks who maybe have a coach, don't have a coach, how did you come to the conclusion that coaching and mentorship would help you with clarifying your vision or refine your vision?
Well, I think number one, it was definitely the accountability, because sometimes, even as a therapist, and again, I'm a very reflective person. So by the
Yeah.
time I come to the session already, like I already know where we're at because I already recognize it, right? So, so I'm like, okay, but sometimes you just need to. It could be one thing that's like, oh yes, lock in right there,
Mhm.
right? Because I may be thinking too broadly or what have you. So, it really, the number one thing it's helped me with is being accountable to the mission, to what I say I want to kind of come to fruition with my practice. But then the other piece has really been the strategy. So yeah, I had all the paperwork, I had all the like the policies, the SOPs, I had all of that, but really operationally, is everything put together? Do people know where to go? Are they, coming to you to ask you all these questions that they can just find the answers to? Um, and also, I think probably the best thing is definitely understanding who I am as a CEO. So when we were talking about locking in on being a CEO, a lot of times, because I'm so inspired by other people's journeys, I had to really stop looking at other people's journeys and
Yeah.
start to identify for myself, what journey did I want to have? How did I want it to look moving forward? And I think that was probably the biggest thing for me in comparison to previous, because I was just like, look at them, we're doing the same thing, and what's happening, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, and not from a comparison piece, but like,
Yeah.
what's missing on my end if we're
Mhm.
walking the same path. And I really think I was not locked in, and I did not have my eyes on what my journey needed to be. And so those are probably the main three things that, really PPC really helped me with.
Awesome. Awesome. And so, what does aligned, sustainable, scalable growth look like for you now?
I went through with I have a CFO, and we went through the numbers. She was like, if you put these things together, and so I'm really trying to make it simplified. So it's, again, just honoring where I'm at, what I can do, being reasonable with that. And she's like, if you put this together, it was like probably like 2 to 300K more than where I had said, like,
Yeah.
oh, this is where we wanted to go. And I was like, oh, okay, I just got to do this and this. Okay, cool. Yeah, we can make it happen. So, that was another pivotal thing in 2025, was getting a CEO and
Mm-hmm.
having more CFO and having more of those money conversations, and understanding, looking at the data, like how
Mm-hmm.
many sessions are we having? How much money is my team bringing in? How can we expand our services to really differentiate? So I'm not just relying only on this one service line. And also, how can I get to make those things happen more quickly so I can get to doing the things that I really like to do, which
Mm-hmm.
is not working inside the practice every day. So, and I don't want to discount that or minimize that, because I'm really good at it. If I wanted to have a full caseload tomorrow, I could do that, because I could do it with my eyes closed, because I know my skill set. But at this point in time, my business needs me to be able to be the CEO with my eyes closed, to be able to really understand my skill set when it comes to that piece of it. So So yeah, so it's a task, but I have the roadmap. I have the understanding of what simple things need to happen by month, by quarter.
Mhm.
And again, just kind of going back to, okay, this is where I can check off that yes, I met this. And also understanding that a projection is a projection. It's nothing if you don't have a strategy and you don't have the bandwidth and the energy to go after that projection. And so
Mhm.
understanding that I get to take a look back at the end of the year, and say, did I meet it? Yes or no? Give myself that opportunity each month to say, did we meet it? Okay, what's the data looking like? Where can we,
Yep.
improve? And so that's kind of how I'm approaching it in order to get as close or over, to where that projection is.
Yeah, I love that because it's true. Like you can have the best laid strategy, you can have the projection, you can say what you're going to do, but if you don't have the right partners, if you don't have the right community, if you don't have the right accountability, then it makes everything so much harder. So it's been really fun to watch your growth, and it's been really fun to watch the friendships that have formed just with you being in the group. And I am just so grateful. And even the fact of hearing you talk, yeah, I have a CFO, my service line, what my team needs. I'm like, this is so CO-ish. Like I just am just really I'm like, yes, yes, because it's so true. And yeah, I mean it's everything. Looking at the data, looking at the numbers, and to get to where you are today, it takes work and you're doing the work every single day and you hold your own self accountable, which is also key. I feel very blessed to be able to work with you. I just want to make sure that you know that. And I just feel blessed to have you on today. So when you think about fully like stepping into your CEO identity, when did you fully realize that you were no longer just a therapist? Because you talked about that. Like if you wanted to have your one-on-one scheduled filled, you could be filled. I also know that there's folks who get stuck in that identity and they're trying to wear both hats or they're nervous or, because there's a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of sweat and blood and tears that go into having the credential. So, what would you say when you realized it? And are there any tips for folks who might be on the fence of what to do next that you would recommend?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because I before I started hiring, I was doing, speaking. I had booked like four-figure
Mhm.
speaking engagements. I had a
Yeah.
podcast. I was on social media. I was
Mhm.
very on. And it was like the switch just got turned down. And I went from being very visible to like, very behind the scenes.
Mhm.
And so, we would talk about, okay, what networking event did you go to? Who did you connect with? And I'm like, I gotta talk to people. Do you see what I'm doing, what I'm going through? you know, and I realized that I had to get my energy wasn't right. And so
Mhm.
last year started to be a little bit more of like, okay, I could take it in small doses. So how many times a month can I, we got real granular like that in our sessions of like, okay, can you just do two events, Crystal? And I'm like, yeah, I could do two. And again, that was all in me trying to find
Mhm.
what could I do to just keep this ship moving, really, to keep the ship moving. And you know, I do feel that I learned a lot from the other people around me and kind of what they were doing. But I also recognize that some of the things that I want to see happen in the practice, we were not equipped for. Didn't have the team necessary so that I
Mm.
can do those things. And so, and even now, that's still true now, but we're moving in that direction. And so just understanding what's taking your energy, what aspects of your business is causing
Mhm.
you to put way too much focus on it, when if you could get that together and you could be over here where that is accelerating where you want to go. And so that's been my focus, I would say, for the last like 4 months. I actually had to have like a come to Jesus moment last week where it was like I realized, oh, I'm actually grieving, like I'm grieving that, like, oh, I did put all this energy, and it's like, we're still not there yet. We're still not there yet. And I had to just take a moment to be grateful that that was my process, and allow that process to leave. Allow it to be wrapped up, because we're moving into a different phase. And I think sometimes that's the challenge, because entrepreneurship can be traumatizing in a lot of aspects, right? It can be
Absolutely.
very dysregulating. So when we have to recognize when those things are coming up, so when you get a notice from your best employee that they want to leave, you got to take care of yourself more quickly than you even think, right? We can't really personalize it. It's for us to understand what happened, what was necessary, was there time, is it time for them to go? And so what pieces need to happen now from this, right? The business still breathes. It still breathes, and it still can live, even this, in spite of whatever changes happen. And so I think the best CEOs out there are the ones that can really navigate and embrace that change, and much more quickly. Like, one of my things is like, Krystal, you got to be faster than that. Like, let's get faster to the decision. Let's get faster to the accountability. Let's get faster to the conversations, and it can be sometimes when people see you, and they, especially in coaching, things can sting a little bit, but you got to sit back and be honest with yourself. Like,
Mhm.
one of the questions you asked me last week, you're like, so you waiting on them to sign a form? And I was like, not really, but okay. So I have to sit back and be like, why? Let's get to
Mhm.
it. Let's get to it,
Yeah.
because anything that you're delaying is keeping you from getting to where you want to go. So it's like, I can't
Absolutely.
keep holding on to that piece of it. It's like, no, we did enough. We set the stage last year. 2026, the stage is here,
It's set.
it's set. So
Let's go.
we're not doing it anymore. So yeah, so that's just where I'm at now. That's what I'm understanding about myself, and about what is necessary for my practice to to live, and to thrive, and to get to where I envision it being.
Yeah, it is. It's a journey. It is. And I love what you're saying. It is. It's very dysregulating. One day you're like on cloud nine. The next minute you're like in a corner crying because something didn't go right. So it is, I think, setting yourself up for the work that you're doing and for the season that you're in, even going back to what you were saying earlier, is super important. I mean, so important, especially in this work. Also, what you're saying, and what I love that you're saying, is like the foundation has to be set first. And oftentimes people miss that part. They come in thinking, oh, I'm ready to scale, I'm ready to go to the next level, but the foundation isn't set, or the mindset has to shift. There's so much work that has to be done, like pre work, I'll say, and then you're ready to scale. So, like, this whole process for you has been such a journey to get you to the place where you're saying, you know what, 2026, like, let's go. And it will be like the little things of getting the signature on the form that will just halt like a whole month worth of activity. And it's just like, no, let's move faster, make decisions faster. So, the best CEOs, I love what you're saying. The best CEOs, they make quick decisions with the data that they have at that point in time, and then they pivot along the way in order to get to where they're going. And so, again, bravo, Krystal, bravo. Like, so good.
Yeah, and just gotta get
So good.
comfortable with that. You have to get comfortable with that. And
Mhm.
I'm blessed that I have a skill set that has allowed me to learn kind of how to do that. But
Amen.
also, I think one of the things about me is just, I'm just a naturally introspective person. I'm
Mhm.
not really into zodiacs, but I'm a Scorpio. Like, we just think and feel
Yeah.
things very deeply. So it's like, by the time you realize where I'm at, I have already been like 20 paces ahead. So you're
Mhm.
like in the dust. You're in the dust here. So sometimes I got to bring myself back, just to be like, hey,
Mhm.
you know help me, or this is what's happening here. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think last year I was able to say, like, hey, I'm actually excited about things. Like I couldn't say that before. I was like, this can go in the garbage. This is basura. Throw it away. So I think just being able to be honest about what was dragging me down in my journey, and to again have that reset time, and don't be scared to like make a declaration, because we don't have to meet it 100%, but the declaration is tied to our vision. We've got to know where we're going. We have to know that, and we have to, you always say, don't forget, just think about your mission and your vision. Are you still connected to that? And sometimes that changes too, right? And we've got to be
Absolutely.
okay with that. So learning how to just practice acceptance, learning how to chase the failures, and learning how to really honor what your needs are as a human being. We're still a whole human being that just so happens to have, a business that we're running, right? It's not our identity. Get out there, have some fun, travel, learn another language like I've been doing the last two years. Just do other things, because all those things helps enhance you as a CEO, and will definitely help to enhance whatever business that you are bringing into this world.
Yes, and I could not imagine anything else that you could say better than that. So, just thank you so much again for just chatting with me today. And thank you so much just for coming on and taking the time. So, where can folks find you if they're going to be out in the world looking for you, which I'm sure they will be?
Yes, it is on my plan. I hope that you all will see me on a TEDx stage soon, because I'm getting back into my speaking bag. But you can find me on
Yes.
LinkedIn and Instagram. And I am Krystal CJ. I think that's my Instagram. Yes, it is. And that's where I hang out mostly. And if you're in Connecticut, feel free to reach out. So contact me so we can meet up.
Awesome. 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 All right. Well, thank you so much for listening today and being with us for CEO Conversations. And we'll see you next time. All right. Bye. Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the episode and it empowers you as the CEO of your practice. If you enjoyed the podcast, please make sure you subscribe, share the message, and leave a review. If you want more information and support in growing and scaling your practice, click the link in the show notes to take advantage of our free resources or apply to work with me directly. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.